Good morning. Good morning. Happy Monday. Happy Monday, November 5th. Holy moly. Holy macaroni. Holy schmoly. Good weekend. We had a good weekend. We had a good weekend, did we? Now we're back on Monday. It's a nice rainy day here in central Pennsylvania. Rainy and cold. Rainy and cold. Although I just was at the gym doing some push-ups, listening to a podcast. If you have not yet listened to my interview with a guy named Mike Ritland, so go through my feed, look for Mike Ritland, search Google Mike Ritland Spaniard Show, it'll come up. Anyway, Mike Ritland is a former Navy SEAL. He's a canine dog trainer. I guess that's a little redundant. He's a canine trainer. He's a dog trainer, working dogs, military dogs, working dogs, military dogs, service dogs, and it's really incredible. So I was just listening to him interview a guy who worked for the CIA who I don't know how to properly say it, but interrogated prisoners, and it was fascinating to hear the interrogator, the guest, talk about techniques they use to interrogate people, and I'm fascinated. The reason I was drawn to Mike so much is, Justin, you're watching this, you'll enjoy this. Actually, Justin, specifically to you, I know you'll enjoy this, but if you haven't listened to my interview with Mike Ritland, do it, because it's so fascinating to see the psychology that's involved with people, how similar that is to dogs. It's, it almost sounds like a little insulting when you say, oh, I'm training dogs like training a person, but it really is. Like the psychology, the perspectives, the energy, the comfort level, it's really fascinating. But anyhow, that's on it's called the Mike Drop, M-I-K-E Drop. Is his show. That's a really good show. He's a friend of mine. But then also his interview on my show. I highly recommend you listen to that. Mike Ritland, canine dog trainer. So yesterday, I went home to run a trail race, Sweat for the Vets 10K. It was in the Allegheny Mountains. Allegheny Trail Runners Association, I think technically is. But it was awesome. It was 6.2, that was a 10K. Yeah, 6.2 miles. And it was tremendous. It was awesome. It was like straight up a freaking mountain and straight down the mountain. And I'm going to say this, it was pretty dangerous. I was running at high speeds. I was running at high speeds when I probably should not have been running at high speeds, because I had a pair of I think they were Nike Frees, and I was in a foot race. I was in a foot race with another guy, and we were running down the other side of the mountain, and I was freaking booking it with no business booking it. And I figured, you know what, I want to beat this guy. And I'm just going to go for it. And if I fall, I'm really going to fall. So it's going to hurt, so let's make it really hurt if I fall. Anyway, he ended up beating me, son of a god, but it was awesome. But I will say, he was not in my age group, so whatever, it was just a kid. Kid. I'm an old man these days. All right, let's rock and roll. Okay, are you going to work for me here, GarageBand? Yeah, you are? Okay, great. Thanks, GarageBand. All right. So fun and easy to talk about Mr. Rogers. 1, 2, 3. Happy Monday morning, my friends. Welcome back to another episode of The Spaniard Show. This is The Spaniard, the world's toughest lifelong learner, and this is AM Excellence 606. The book we're studying is The Good Neighbor. You can get this book and every other book I read at charliespaniard.com/reading list, and you'll be helping support the show. I was just telling Facebook Live, I ran a trail race yesterday, The Sweat for the Vets 2018. It was at Brush Mountain Sportsman's Club back in my hometown area of Altoona, PA. It was awesome. It was 6.2 miles. It was a 10K up a mountain, down a mountain. I was running at high speeds that I absolutely should not have been running at so fast, so hard down a hill in the mud with big boulders wearing a pair of Nike Frees. So I've done enough stinking trail races and Spartan races that I should invest in a pair of trail shoes, but I keep saying, nah, these will do. So no soles at all, but it was an awesome one. Let's get back to the book, The Good Neighbor by Maxwell King. So, Mr. Rogers, I want to point this out. Today's episode is about this idea of innovation, evolution, a little bit of luck coming here, but also authenticity and trueness to oneself. So Mr. Rogers, for a period, went up to Canada, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, and he had a stint. So initially he had the show called The Children's Corner with Josie Carey. It evolved. He went to Canada. In Canada, he had a great experience, but at this point, Mr. Rogers was still a puppet. People didn't know Mr. Rogers. He was a puppet. He was the voice of a puppet. So while at the CBC, Fred Rainsbury said this. He was, quote, sure that Fred Rogers' authenticity as a person would come through on camera. So isn't it neat to think that you're just traipsing along doing what you do, and then someone sees you and they say, hey, you know what? This is really good, but it'd be really good if you did this. Have you ever considered that? And that's one of those instances that I feel Mr. Rogers was very particular, very specific, knew what he wanted, but he worked himself to that point. Like through time, he understood, or he developed that skill to be able to differentiate between yes and no. And at this point, when Fred Rainsbury, one of the execs at CBC, said that, it struck a nerve. Another exec, Francis Chapman, said this, quote, and this is so cool, and this is what I urge you and me and my kids and everyone who's listening, quote, Fred was so totally honest, a naturally honest person. He just couldn't be anything but himself. Do you know how much freedom there is in just being yourself? Do you know how much freedom there is in not putting on airs, not trying to keep up with the Joneses, just being you, just being real? This takes us back to one of my all-time favorite quotes, and it happens to be Mr. Rogers. One of the greatest gifts you can give anybody is the gift of your honest self. So Mr. Rogers was doing that. He was evolving. There were iterations going on and on and on, and then others started to see his potential. So it was kind of a perfect storm. So at one point, he decided, I want to go back to the U.S. So his whole family had moved up to Canada, wants to go back to the U.S. Listen to this. And this is where our old friend luck comes into it. And I'm going to say luck with quotation marks because is luck really luck, right? If you win the lottery, yeah, maybe it's luck. In this instance, I say it's a little bit more than luck. So Mr. Rogers and his family moved back to Pennsylvania, back to the Pittsburgh area. He wants to be near his home. And it says this in the book, quote, Fred Rogers would return to the U.S. with invaluable experience as a writer, puppeteer, host, and producer of just the sort of show he hoped to make. So think of this. Let's go back to our friend Scott Adams, How to Fail at Almost Everything and Still Win Big. Even if Mr. Rogers didn't come home with, I don't know the specifics of this, I'm hypothetically speaking, even if he came home with no money, even if he came home with no prospects, which he did come home with no prospects, he still has the invaluable experience as a writer, puppeteer, host, and producer of the sort of show he had hoped to make. Look, the Spaniard Show is growing. The Spaniard Show is building. Dred and I talk all the time that if we stop today, boy, would that stink. But also look at everything we would have gained as people, as humans, in our human experience. The experience of publishing shows. We have over 900 shows. The experience of all of these guests coming in on 100 different guests and all these different books studied and note-taken. And Dred has all this databases that would blow your mind. We have those experiences. So when you're shooting for something, you're aiming for something, remember that. It's not just the end goal that you get or don't get. It's the people, the experiences, and Mr. Rogers, it's the invaluable experience as a writer, puppeteer, host, and producer of exactly what he wanted to create, except there were no prospects. And this is where luck comes into it. Quote, as luck would have it, the Sears Roebuck Foundation was very interested in television in the opportunity to fund programming that might reflect well on the Sears image. So Sears Roebuck decided to put their name in money, put their mouth where the money is, and back Mr. Rogers. He was very interested in non-commercial television. He didn't want advertising. Let me throw this out, advertising to kids. Let me throw this out. Ever since reading this book, I've become much more aware of advertising to kids. When my daughter is watching cartoons, my son is watching cartoons, do yourself a favor and turn on that switch in your mind where you're going to be aware of children's advertising and commercials to kids. It is terrible. It is so terrible, and it is junk. And I'm going to say it's junk. And this is, I'm talking out loud for the first time. The stuff that they're selling my daughter is not stuff I love. Okay, let's get back to the book. But this relationship, it was luck, right? Well, hold on. Let's think about that. Is it luck? Remember our friend Kevin Hart in The Quiet Storm of Kevin Hart? Do you remember The Quiet Storm of Kevin Hart? It was like 7 years on the road. Kevin Hart thought that, you know what? I've just got to be my best, and I've got to be my best as often as possible. And if I'm my best as often as possible, the odds of someone hearing me and the odds of someone saying, hey, that guy is it, such as Sears Roebuck did for Mr. Rogers, that's the name of the game. That was the strategy. So was it luck? Maybe. Was there a lot more to it than just luck? 1,000,000% yes. And based on that Sears Roebuck support, it says this, quote, the extraordinary importance of the Sears support was that it gave Fred Rogers freedom from commercial pressures and the freedom to focus only on the highest academic standards. You know, a break in the fourth wall here, this is my belief. This is what Dredd and I believe in. This is our truth. This is why we do what we do, because of the mission, because of the idea of spreading lifelong learning and the inescapable value that it provides other people. And we believe that if we keep doing it at a high level over and over and over, it will take notice and it will grow. And I'd like to think, I do think, and I do truly believe in this. What Mr. Rogers gave of himself, right? Of his truth, of himself, of the belief in what he was doing, the importance of early childhood development and education, social and emotional, over the cognitive growth, it came back to him. So whether you want to call it luck, that there were prospects, luck that Sears backed him, luck, etc., you cannot escape the fact that Mr. Rogers gave all of himself continuously, no matter what, crystal clear, clarity, vision on what he wanted, the show he wanted, and the belief in it, that he earned that support. It was never guaranteed. Nobody ever said, Fred, if you keep doing this over and over and over, Sears is going to back you for 24 years. No one ever said that. But he believed in it. I believe in it. Dredd believes in it. I encourage you to believe in it. Find your truth. Be your truth, my friends. This has been AM Excellence 606. I love this. I love this. I know sometimes I might get preachy, but it's all in the love of learning. This has been AMX 606, the Good Neighbor 10. Interact on social media at Charlie Spaniard. Check out the website. Read yourself a book. charliespaniard.com/reading list. See ya. Hello, Anthony Pasquini. I feel like that's a new name. Really a new perspective watching kids television after reading this book. The pimple poppers and the just all this stuff. It's terrible. All right, folks. 6:48, which means it's really 7:48, which I still don't get. I still don't get time changes. But anyhow, my point is that my daughter's going to be up here soon. So I got to get upstairs to greet her. I'll see you tomorrow morning for AMX 607.